I played Metro 2033 back when I still lived in Iran, so this is more than 5 or 6 years ago, and it was a unique experience because Metro 2033, the game, was a direct adaptation of the book by the same name, written by Dmitry Gluhovsky. And it was, like I said, a unique experience reading a book and then playing a game based on the book. Because if it's a movie or a series that has been that is the adaptation, you can see it and it can definitely be an enjoyable experience. But if it's a game and being able to play as one of the characters and you will be the one walking through the world doing things that the characters are doing and so on, it's a different experience. And doing them together, it was amazing reading the book and then literally living in the world that Dimitri has written through the game. It was an awesome experience. Now, Metro Last Light was released in 2013, and I played it once when it was released, and then I didn't touch it again until recently. Recently, I acquired the Redux version, which is basically the same game but with graphical improvement and all the DLC. Before playing the latest game in the series, Metro Exodus, in order to recap all the things that have happened. So I said to myself, I might as well do a review on Metro Last Light. Now, talking about Metro Last Light, I'm going to divide this video into three different parts. First is the presentation, story, and then the combat. I've decided to talk about presentation first because this is what the Metro games have always excelled at. They draw you in like a few other games have. To give you a basic premise, a really short summary of the world of Metro, there has been a nuclear war, and because of the nuclear bombs that have dropped in Moscow, the surface is uninhabitable anymore. You cannot live on the surface because of the fallout and all the radiation and the destruction. So the people have been forced to live in the underground metro network of Moscow. And this by itself is already an interesting premise for me because it gives you a lot of opportunities to imagine what life would be like if something like this had actually happened. And this is something that this game definitely had in mind and it put its effort on it because the first game still did a good job of showing us how life is in the metro and what people have to do in order to survive and how life can be bleak and so on. But Metro Last Light, taking place sometime after Metro 2033, takes it a step further and shows us how humanity has now adapted in order not to just survive but to live in the underground metro with the same, not the same conditions, but almost the same way that they live, that they used to live on the surface, with different activities, different things that they do, the interactions they have with each other, and so on. Now, because of this premise, there are two different, let's say, places and environments you can be in. You can be either be on the surface or in the metro itself. Talking about the metro itself, it's really great to see what they have done and how much effort they put into realizing this world. Because as you go through the different metro stations, you see how each of them are different and each of them show how humanity has adapted in order to survive and live in the metro underground station and how they have changed certain activities in order to be able to do them underground. Now, in this in Moscow at least, in the underground station, there are four factions. Well, five, depending on how you count them. You have the Hansa Circle line. You have the neutral stations, which are independent. You have the red line controlled by the communists, and then you have certain stations controlled by the Nazis. And then you have other stations and outposts controlled by the Rangers, which are basically soldiers of the police station, police station, which is one of the biggest stations in Metro. Now, As you go through different stations in this game, there aren't that many, but each of them is distinct. You can obviously tell the difference between a neutral station, a communist station, and a Nazi station. Even though they are a bit exaggerated, it's still refreshing to see how the factions actually change the characteristics and the looks and the feelings of each station. So it makes it that much more believable that yes, such factions, such different groups of people actually exist. And not only that, but also in each station, you get to see how there are normal people who are trying to go about their lives and just live their lives, have children, have family, and so on. You see the soldiers talking about their duties. You can see bandits and thieves trying to scheme stuff. You can see poor people begging for money. You can see people, powerful people such as the military people having good tea and so on. And it's just as if it's been realized. It's they have put so much effort into it. As you go through each station, you can literally take your time looking around you and you can see how much attention has been put into everything. Everything has some purpose to it. And it's not just there to look. You can talk to different people, you can give money to the poor, you can listen into conversations, which can sometimes have important um, information for you. You can do different activities, which I'll come to talk about. So it's definitely a live world. Not just live that it looks alive and there are people in it, but also because you can interact with it. Now, this is the life in the stations, but obviously you have to go between the stations, and this is obviously done through the tunnels. Now, the tunnels are what show the dark side of living in the metro underground station. Because while living in the stations can feel safe of some sorts, even though it's not perfect, when you go through the tunnels is when you see the actual nature of life underground. Because it's not just the nuclear fallout and radiation that you have to worry about, but the radiation has also caused some mutations in certain groups of people, and producing different groups of monsters and so on. There are different bunch of them, and going fighting them, all of them is going to be something I'm going to talk about in the combat part. As you go through the tunnels, you immediately start to feel the intensity and the stress of not being in a safe environment as you were in the stations. It's, it gives you an idea of how, even though people live in the stations, if they have to move between stations, it can be a life or death situation. It's not something that is easy at all. And you can see it sometimes when interacting with people you find in the tunnels. You see the things they have to go through. Not just the mutants, not just the radiation, not just the monsters, but also cave-ins, destructions in the tunnels, and also some bandits who have occupied certain parts of the tunnels in order to rob the people who pass through. And then this is all on the ground, and then we get to the surface. The surface has been realized so beautifully and at the same time so haunting. The first time you go up to the surface, it's actually breathtaking because it's Metro Last Light Redux is not the game with the most detail, but it's definitely one of the most artistic games out there. That with the things that they had, the technology they had, they did all they could, and they realized this post-nuclear world like few other games. I like Fallout, but this game has definitely more like a believable, not believable, but a unique Fallout world. The way it looks, it actually looks like as if there has been a nuclear war. You have puddles of water which are boiling because of radiations. You have buildings that are completely fallen apart. You can see bits of the ground which are just torn apart. You can see big cracks in the ground. You can see planes that have fallen out of the sky when they were nuclear bombs were dropped. And then there are additional details that make the service a more haunting place to be. When the wind blows and then you just see all these ashes and dust and other things just twirl around you. It's as if you are literally standing there with the sound design, especially because as you go upstairs, you have to put a mask on. It's the water gets on your mask, the wind, you can hear it hit against your mask, and then the lighting, everything is beautiful in this game, especially on the surface. The surface is definitely the surface world in the Metro universe is definitely one of the things that I've always loved and always sticks out in my mind that I will never forget. And it's not just this hunting nature to see a post-nuclear war environment, but also there are some things which I'm not going to spoil, but things that are sort of supernatural related to the lives of the millions of people that used to live in the city and how all of their lives being lost at the same time might create some sort of problem, some sort of supernatural problem, which you'll be definitely able to see as you play through the game. And it's done expertly. It's sometimes it can get a bit old, but you'll see what I'm talking about as you play through the game. I do not want to spoil it because you have to see it yourself. When you see them, you'll know what I'm talking about. And part of the presentation in this game is how it's supposed to build up in tense moments and make you feel on your toes because this is, after all, a sort of horror game, and it can definitely feel like that at times. Not definitely as much as other games like Silent Hill, for example, but it definitely has a lot of moments where it's building up a tense moment, and you are feeling the intensity of the moment as well, and you are just you start to get scared about the uncertainty of what lies ahead and the things around you. And like other horror games and movies, there are jump scares as well, but thankfully there aren't that many in this game. And usually, if there are any, they are decent, they are all right. They can be predictable, but because there are so few of them, they don't come off as a problem or anything. So it definitely presents its horror element in a good way as well. Now on to the story of Metro Last Light. It follows the ending of Metro 2033, where Artyom blew the missiles at the layer of the Dark Ones. And at the beginning of this game, we see all the effects of everything that happened in the last game. So the D6 bunker that we found in the last game, which was sort of this legendary thing that no one knew about, that no one was sure exactly where it was in the metro, is now occupied by the Rangers, and it's almost like this military base. And also at the very beginning of the game, we see the same layer of the Dark Ones that we bombed in the previous game. And already this, what it does, gives a good feel of continuity to these games, as if they are parts, it's a direct continuation. So not separate stories completely, they are interconnected basically. And the story of the game itself, of Metro Last Light, it's decent. It's not groundbreaking or the most memorable campaign ever, but it's good. It definitely has its problems at times, but overall, it's a decent story. To sum it up quickly, you find out that in the layer that you bombed, there might be a survivor dark one, but the thing is, this isn't just any dark one, it's a child apparently, like a small dark one that you have to go and find out and figure out what to do with it. And also, there seems to be some plotting by the other factions in the metro to cause some trouble. These are the two basic storylines in the game, and then you go between them normally. So it's not as if they are separated from each other. Usually, as you are going through one of the storylines, you get like little bits regarding the other one as well. And the characters in this story aren't exactly memorable or special, but they are serviceable. They are sort of like stereotypes, but they are serviceable for the story. The story is simple, but after all, the focus of the game is on atmosphere and gameplay, so it's still good to see a decent story given to us in this game. And the characters we see do that. They just serve the story in a good way, and that's all they need to do. And your character, Artyom, he's a silent character, so in the gameplay, he doesn't talk at all. But in the sort of intermissions you have, the loading screens between each mission, he does talk. He does give you like a short summary of what just happened and what is going through his mind. I think this is a strange choice, but one that I understand because in a horror game, if your protagonist doesn't talk, it'll bring you more into the world and it will make you feel more as if you are the person walking through that world, as if you were in their shoes. So overall, it's a good choice in my opinion to have this silent character. And the next thing to talk about, I guess, would be the pacing of the video game. It's not the best, I'll say this. Regarding combat and like as in fighting moments and moments where you just have to walk through places and interact with people. I think this is laid out well. You never feel like a sort of fight is going on for too long, or you are spending too much time in a urban area and station. So that is done well. But one thing that was a bit annoying at sometimes are these moments, especially on the surface, not just in the surface, but these moments where you sort of get separated from other people and it's just you or you only have one companion. And these sections can go on for a bit too long. I understand that they are definitely necessary to be there because, like I said, after leaving an area with people and just going through the metro or the surface by yourself, that's that silence that there is no one you can talk to and all you can hear is the sound of the monsters or the sounds in the metro. It definitely is terrifying and really gets you on edge, but they do sometimes go on a bit too long in my opinion. If those sections were just a bit shorter, I think it would have made the pacing a lot better. And another thing they added into this game was a good and bad sort of person system. So you can do bad things in the campaign or good things. Bad things, obviously, for example, killing people and killing prisoners or ignoring the needs of others. And then good things such as sparing people and knocking the soldiers out or helping the poor where you can. And this doesn't change anything during the game. It just changes the ending. I don't see the reason why they added it. It does add replayability, I'll say this much. One gameplay you play as sort of a good person, and then in the next gameplay you play as this vicious warrior who just kills anyone who gets in his way. Um, it's a bit tacked on. It just came out of nowhere, and it wasn't it wasn't deep enough to have to elevate the game in my opinion. But like I said, it adds replayability. However, one big issue that I have with it is that if I'm not mistaken, for example, in order to get a good ending, you have to do all the good things and not do any of the bad things. If, for example, you do all the good things and then you do like some of the bad stuff, you will still get the bad ending. And this happened to me on a second playthrough where I was planning to be a good person and was doing everything well, but in the end, I still got the bad ending because, for example, I didn't give some poor person some money. So this is definitely something that annoyed me a bit. But overall, the story is serviceable, it's decent. It does have its issues, like I said, it's not perfect. but I'm still happy with what I got in this game compared to other sequel stories that you may get in video games or movies. It's something that it doesn't feel rushed, or it's just there to be make the sequel. It feels like a normal continuation of the story in the first game. Now to talk about the combat in this game. This game is at its core a survival horror game. So the type of combat you get in this game is usually revolved around the sort of stealth type of gameplay. Of course, it depends on the scenario. For example, in a lot of situations, when you're going through enemy territory, whether it's a raid or Nazi station or a tunnel with bandits, usually I think it's possible to go through these levels completely using stealth. But regarding other sections of the game where it's with monsters, obviously you have to go all out and there is no stealth option. You can try to start it using stealth, but eventually you'll have to just get your guns out and start shooting everything. This is not a criticism, but because the whole mechanic of the game is built around this survival element, the actual action bits with all of the guns and everything do feel a bit not out of place, but that they could use a bit more polish. Now, for example, what I'm talking about is that in this game, probably because of trying to achieve a sense of realism. For example, when you have to ADS, it actually takes some time for him to bring the scope in front of him. Not too slow, but what you can see him you can see him answering to your command, but it will take time before he's actually in your sights. And this, when it's in a fast gameplay, in an action sequence, can be a bit problematic, and you'll just have to hip fire everywhere. And again, when you are hit, obviously because of the realism, you start moving around a lot, your aim goes off, your screen starts getting red because of the damage you've gotten. Again, I understand it, but it sort of makes the experience a bit unenjoyable. Like I understand it's supposed to make it more intense, and it does, but at times I just wish this wasn't there, so I could just have like a normal gunplay. But again, like I said, this is a bit complicated trying to explain this part because it's at its core a survival game. I think it's sort of trying to discourage you from going all out, guns blazing. You do have the option to do that, but it will come at a great cost. First of all, you'll be receiving damage, so you'll have to use your med kit. You'll damage your mask, is possible. You'll run out of bullets, and like I said, because it's a survival game, resources are really important. So any bullet that you can save, any grenade, it will come to use later. Especially because, like I said, with the monsters and the surface, you do not have the stealth option. You are going to need, trust me, even in normal difficulty, you are going to need every bullet and resource you can for the surface. That said, though, something interesting that this game has done, which I think is really fantastic for the gameplay, and it gives it multiple layers to the gunplay, to every fight and encounter that you have, is that the currency in this world are military grade bullets. So basically, not the bullets that are handmade in the metro, but the bullets from the era before the nuclear war, which are actually good. These bullets are used as currency, but you can use them in fights for much more damage and impact against your opponents. But if you do that, you'll be literally shooting away your money, but it might save your life. So it definitely makes the combat much more deep, and it sort of brings the survival elements, how you have to keep on thinking about your resources for survival into the combat, which I absolutely loved, and I thought it was clever. And then regarding the guns in this game, there is decent variety considering that you and people are trying to survive in an underground metro tunnel system after a nuclear war. So obviously there isn't going to be too many options, but still you have st your typical stuff like rifles, pistols, and shotguns. But then you have other sort of improvised guns, such as the ones that shoot little metal spheres that you have to pump air into, or that shoot arrows. These are stealth guns because they obviously use air pressure. But also with the normal guns, you have the option to put attachments on them to make them silent, or add other attachments as well, with such as laser sights or reflexes, or some some addition that will make it more stable. But something that I found annoying is how you cannot change it. You can only do it in the shops. So for example, if you find a gun that has a silencer attached to it, but a silencer reduces the damage, so you want to take it off, you can't just take it off by yourself. You have to wait until you find the next shop, and in the shop you can customize it and take off this silencer, or put other attachments on it. This was definitely a weird choice in my opinion, but I hope that they definitely address this in the third game, where we can directly manage the attachments on our guns. Now, apart from the guns, you have normal throwing knives, which are for stealth, which are sort of like the combat axes in Call of Duty, that they are a one-hit kill. So usually, apart from the limbs, if you hit your enemy in any part of their torso with a throwing knife, and these knives are really small, by the way, like the size of the palm of your hand, they'll just immediately die. It's a bit weird. I think it would have been more interesting if they had put in a system where you'd have to, I don't know, definitely aim for the head or the neck, or like the heart or something else, because considering how much realistic the game is trying to be, this feels out of place a little bit. And while we're talking about killing your enemies, I'm also going to talk about the enemy AI in this game. It's not, when it comes to the stealth, it's a bit weird because, like other games, you have to walk through the shadows in order to stay in stealth. But thing is, in this game, like an area that is like badly lit still counts as complete darkness and complete stealth. So you can be standing, for example, 3 meters away from a person in a dimly lit area, but because your indicator doesn't say it's actually lit, it's as if you're standing in absolute darkness and the person cannot see you, even if they are staring directly at you. So I think they could have done something more regarding that in order to make the stealth a bit more risky and intense. But when the fights break out, the enemies are usually really offensive, and they use grenades, and they can be intimidating. So in that regards, you have to be careful in picking fights with enemies. And the monsters, same thing goes with them. They just usually come, all of them come at you at the same time and try to overwhelm you. So the enemy AI is actually not too bad. It's decent for this game. Now to wrap everything up, just going to talk about some other minor stuff. You have some small Easter eggs in there, which include, I actually don't know what they're called, but you know those Russian dolls that fit into each other? They have a version of that with ammo boxes, which was cool to find it in there. And you have also a lot of references to Dimitri's 2000, Metro 2033 book. You can see the book itself, posters about it, literally posters that say it's going to be released on this date, go check it out. So it was cool to see it in the game itself. Another small thing that you can find in the game, which I'm not sure if it's in the original one, but it was there in the Redux version. In each level, I'm pretty sure it's each level, there are these lockers that are hidden around, and for each locker, there is also a key, and the key is usually located in, for example, strapped to a dead body or in a corner somewhere else in the map. And if you find the key, you can use it to open the locker, and you'll have to obviously find the locker as well. But if you do, it usually rewards you with ammo and filters, ammo whether normal or military grade. So it's a little something else to have the player look out for and pay attention to when playing the game. Now, after you finish the campaign, with the Redux version, the DLC missions are included. So these missions range from simple scenarios, like a scenario for a couple of minutes, to like a mini story with some of the other characters. For example, you can play as Pavel, for example, which is one of your friends in the campaign. You have this sort of Modern Warfare 2 museum where you can see the different characters, the different monsters. They're all showcased exactly like in a museum. There is this shooting range where you can try out the different guns. It's a good addition that is appreciated definitely. Now, the final thing to talk about is the different modes you can play this game with. So, for any person who is new to the Metro series, it's probably going to be confusing if you pick up the Redux version, because in total, you can play this game in 8 different modes. I know it sounds crazy, but it's actually 8. I'm not even joking. So first of all, you have two main modes. You have survival and then you have Spartan. The difference between these two is that apparently I haven't played Spartan because I'm not interested. Because in Spartan, what it does is that it makes the gameplay more friendly to people who just want to go in guns blazing and who don't like the survival aspect of the game as much. What I've heard is that it doesn't make much of a difference to the gameplay. Apparently, you run faster and reload faster, but that's about it. I understand they wanted to make it feel more inclusive so other people can play, but Metro by itself is a survival horror game, so I don't understand the reasoning behind there being a Spartan mode. But then in each of them, for example, in survival mode, you have 4 different modes in that one. You have normal, you have hardcore, then you have ranger, then you have ranger hardcore. So normal is normal, hardcore is basically resources are more scarce and enemies are more deadly. And then ranger is basically you are weaker, but so are the enemies. So it's like elevates the risks on both sides, and also you don't get any hints regarding your interactions, or the UI is gone, or it's at a minimum. So it's for people who want a complete immersion. So there is, in my opinion, there are too much modes, but depending on the mode you want to play in, I'm pretty sure you're going to find what you're looking for. So overall, Metro Last Light Redux is definitely a solid game. If I had to give it a rating, it would be around 8 or 9 out of 10, because it is there are, like I said in my review, there are a lot of great things about it, but there are some small details that don't allow it to be like a solid 9 or even a 10. But I would definitely recommend it to people who like survival games, horror games, or stealth games. I think they will definitely love this game. So be sure to give it a go.